Testing, testing. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to get started. We'll start with some introductions. So we're here with the Oregon Department of Energy, and we have the applicant team from Savion, and they'll introduce themselves. With the Oregon Department of Energy, my name is Sarah Esterson. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor in the Siting Division. And Kate Sloan is the lead senior analyst that's processing the permit application for Yellow Rosebush Energy Center. And then we have Nancy Hatch. She's our amazing administrative assistant. We also have two members of the Energy Facility Siting Council here today. One is participating remotely. One is here, Ann Byer, and then we have Cindy Condon on the line. And so at any time after we get through the presentations, we're here to answer questions, but we can answer any questions after the meeting, and then you'll get our contact information. We're happy to help in any way through other forms of communication. So we'll hand it over to your team for introductions, then we can get started.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Chris Powers. I'm a Senior Director, Permitting Environmental for Savion, and I manage all of our entitlements for our portfolio in the West, which includes Pacific Northwest, Mountain West, California, Arizona, and Texas, and Oklahoma. And I also am the lead permitting guy for this particular project. So thanks, everybody, for coming.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mitch Taylor. I lead Savion's development efforts for the West. I'm filling in today for Jeff Watson, who's the project developer. He had a family emergency this week. So if there's not a question that I can answer, we'll be following up with some answers or address them the next meeting. Would love to share my contact information, be able to follow up if there's any questions that you have outside of this. Really appreciate everyone coming out. Met some of you and look forward to meeting the rest of you here later. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linnea Fossum. I'm with Tetra Tech, and we are consultants to Savion, helping them out with the studies and developing the permit application. So I'm here to help with factual information regarding the permit application itself.
We have more than one of these going at one time, we get feedback. All right, well, good evening, everybody. My name is Kathleen Sloan. I'm a senior siting analyst for the Oregon Department of Energy. As Sarah, my colleague, introduced earlier, we're here to talk about the application for site certificate for the Yellow Rosebush Energy Center. Next slide. So just really briefly, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview so you know what to expect for the schedule. I'm going to try to keep my comments fairly brief, but I do want to go over the important parts of our process, our siting process. After I'm done, I'm going to turn it back over to the applicant team, and they're going to do a little presentation on themselves and their proposed project. And then we're going to open it up for Q&A. Anybody that wants to speak, we do ask you fill out a Q&A form or just a contact form if there are a lot of people who want to speak. Doesn't seem like we're overflowing, so we might just go by raised hands. And we do ask when people come up to speak, they at least identify themselves so that we understand who we're talking to. I think that one of the things I want to point out is we are recording this meeting due to issues with our video camera. I don't know that it's being video recorded, but it is being audio recorded. A copy of this presentation that we go through tonight and the recording will be posted on the project webpage, which is listed on the bottom of the slide that I'm showing. This particularly for the people that are on the WebEx or on the phone. If you go to that webpage, that's the Oregon Department of Energy webpage for the proposed facility. On it, you'll find all the documents that we're going to talk about tonight. And any information that you might want to follow or track about the facility will be posted there by the department. So I just wanted to make people aware of that if they want to follow along on the phone. So the presentation that I'm doing is really about the energy facility siting process for the Department of Energy, who we are as the siting division, and our role as support staff for the Energy Facility Siting Council, who are the decision makers up or down on whether a proposed facility is approved. So just want to cover that. Next slide. So why would the Oregon Department of Energy, or FSEC, be involved in a proposed facility on private land? It is because it falls under the definition of a state jurisdictional energy facility. And so this slide is specific to solar because of the size of the solar project. It's over 8,000 acre site boundary. It is clearly under FSEC jurisdiction, which means it needs to obtain a site certificate, which is basically a permit from the Energy Facility Siting Council in order to move forward. And the application that we're going to talk about tonight is part of that process. Next slide. So the Energy Facility Siting Council, like I said, we're staff, Sarah, Nancy, and I, and we work in support of council. We have a member in the room, Ms. Ann Byer. And the council is appointed by the governor and approved by the state senate. It represents a diversity of backgrounds and geographies. It's a 7-member council. They operate as an independent body to evaluate under our siting standards as required by the state, whether or not a facility will meet those standards. So we make recommendations to FSEC. And like I said, ultimately it is the council, we call them FSEC for short. It is the council that makes the decision. Next slide. So just really briefly, and this information is in the notice, it's also on the public website, but just really briefly, and the application team will also give you more information about what is being proposed. So what is being proposed is an 800 megawatt solar power generating facility with related or supporting facilities. That includes a battery storage, includes the collector substation, an O&M building. It also includes collector lines to collect all the energy from the panels and route it to the substation. It will have a fence that secures the facility from the outside, 8 feet tall. There will be existing and new improved roads with inside the facility for access. There will be some temporary staging areas used for construction that will be restored upon construction completion. And as submitted, the application is requesting that we consider 2 possible transmission line alternatives. One would be directly adjacent to the facility and would connect into the substation right there. Another alternative, which the applicant can talk more about, would run north from the facility, parallel to the existing BPA line, 4.5 miles. About almost 2 miles of that extends into Sherman County. And that is, we're considering all of those in the application, but the applicant has identified that they will pick one of those 2 to actually go to construction. Next slide is just an overview map of, it shows where we are in Maupin. And then this facility, if you're familiar with the bake oven facility, it's nearby that one. But that's the site boundary as proposed. The little line that shoots north to the Buckley substation is that alternative transmission line. Next slide. So this slide is, I think, one of the more important slides in our presentation. It's just an overview of our 7-step site certificate approval process. So about 2 years ago, almost exactly, the applicant submitted a notice of intent to submit an application. And so we were back at the notice of intent stage. We issued a public notice. We held a public information meeting up here, and we initiated agency coordination. We did all of this. We took public comment, and out of that, we generated what we call the project order, which we issue to the applicant, which identifies all the requirements for an application. And We went through that process in 2023, 2024. And about a year ago, they submitted their preliminary application based on that project order and notice of intent. And in that interim, they've been conducting all of those studies and doing a lot of the work that needs to go in to that application. So that's where we are now. So we received a preliminary application, which is the first step of the application process. And in the preliminary application, it's basically the applicant's first attempt, first stab at demonstrating how they're going to meet all of our 14 standards. So the preliminary application initiates our review, our reviewing agency coordination. It gets posted to the webpage, and then we work with the applicant through review and request for additional information to get them to a point of what we determine to be completeness, at which time we notify that they have a complete application. They've submitted enough information that we feel we have a complete application. We ask them to compile and submit that complete application, and we issue a public notice of complete ASC, and we schedule a public information meeting. And that's where we are right now. So we have a complete application. It's available on the webpage. All of the exhibits are there. And the public information meeting that we're having tonight is not a public comment period. It's basically making the public aware that an application is complete, it's been submitted, and it's on file, and we're preparing a draft proposed order based upon that application. And it's really intended to inform you of our process so that you can participate, if you're so inclined, in the public comment period and the public participation process that will initiate once we issue that draft proposed order. So this is really giving you a heads up. Hey, we've got an application. Here's the information. We're preparing a draft proposed order. And when we issue that draft proposed order, we're going to issue a public notice. We're going to issue a public notice of public comment. So it's a public comment period that opens. It's going to be about 30 days, and a public hearing. And that public hearing will also be held up here, and it will be a time to make comments on the record. So if you have opinions, thoughts, things that you want to say on the record of the draft proposed order for council, that will happen at a future stage at the draft proposed order. So really, this is still an information stage, but it is important for people to realize that we have a complete application. It is currently under review, and we are preparing that draft proposed order. It's almost complete because we've been working on it for a year, and we'll probably issue it within the next couple of weeks, like early October is our target, possibly even next week. After the draft proposed order, like I said, we have a public notice, public hearing, public comment. We also have a council review of all of that. So once all of that is closed, we will take the draft proposed order to council and have them review it. And they will review comments. They will give us comments and directions as staff. And out of that process, we'll prepare proposed order. Those two documents are prepared by the department. And in it, we make recommendations to council on findings of whether or not standards can be met. And then council will review the proposed order after we have issued it and issued a public notice and a notice of contested case. The contested case is a thing that happens in our process, but people have the ability to request to participate in it if they have an issue with the project or a concern that they think we have not met a standard or we have not demonstrated that things can be mitigated, or if you have it has to be tied to our standards and it has to have relevance to our review. But if there is something that you have raised on the record that relates to one of our standards, so if you commented on the record during the DPO, you can request to participate in the contested case. So at a future date, at a future meeting after the proposed order and after the period of request, we put it out, people want to request a contested case, I believe they have 30 days. If we get a request, when council reviews the proposed order, they will review the proposed order, any requests for a contested case, and then we just move on. And I got it wrong, so hang on. So fix me. Sorry. I did not mean to misspeak, but Sarah knows this process much better
Yeah.
than I.
This is Sarah Esterson for the record. So I know this is already a lot of process that we've gone through. Just to clarify, it will be a third-party hearings officer that would evaluate a petition for contested
Okay.
case in the application process. Kate was referring to the amendment process.
Ah,
It's just that it goes to an external attorney to then evaluate issues that are going to be part of a contested case if we get such requests.
thank you.
Yeah,
for
no problem.
correcting me. Not mean to misspeak. And out of all of that, once it's all done, it's the final order, and council will review and adopt a final order, issue a final order, at which time we will prepare final documents that go to the chair of the FSEC council, and they will sign those documents. One of those will be the site certificate, at which time a facility would be approved if council approves it. So it's at that final order stage that council will ultimately make that decision to approve or deny a site certificate. And through all of that process, there are multiple steps in which the public can participate. And that's the part I want to emphasize. So those green boxes on the chevron is that those are the places where the public can engage and provide substantive and meaningful input on our process. Next slide. So just, I briefly mentioned this, but just as a quick rundown of where we are and where we started, they did file a notice of intent almost 2 years ago. We issued a project order in January 2024. Since that time, they've been preparing and working on their application materials. They submitted a preliminary application also about a year ago. And we deemed them complete September 5th. They submitted we deemed them complete August 28th. They submitted the complete application on September 5th. And we issued the notice on the 10th and posted the materials to the webpage once we had made sure they were all there. And like I said, we're planning to issue the draft proposed order soon. So this is part of why we're here, is to make you all aware so you know it's coming and you'll be prepared to engage. Next slide. So an application is complete. The applicant has basically submitted enough information for the department to make recommendations and findings that a standard had been made. The council makes the findings, we make the recommendation. So a complete application is not approval. And that's one part that I really wanted to emphasize. It's a step in our process. It's an important step, but it is not a predetermining step. And it does not mean we have approved anything or that council is approving anything. Next slide. And this is just all of this information. I'll share some links. There's a handout over here that has some great information on our standards and links and resources online. But just so you realize, we have Oregon administrative rules and we have standards that we have to meet for our citing process. And like I said, there's 14 standards, I believe, that apply to everything. And then there's 2 that sometimes apply. And we require a complete application to be submitted in exhibits. Each exhibit is supposed to be focused on a particular standard. And in that exhibit, they are supposed to provide the information in which they are demonstrating how they believe that standard can be met. Next slide. As I mentioned before, we're preparing the draft proposed order. That draft proposed order will include our recommendations of findings on conclusions of law, making recommendations to council, and it will include recommended site certificate conditions from the department based on our evaluation. And we issue a notice once the draft proposed order is issued. It will be published in the paper similar to this meeting notice. It will go out on the internet. If you're signed up for our Click Dimensions email notifications, you'll get them that way. If you're a property owner that received a notice in the mail, you'll get it that way. And it will be another public notice, but this one will be opening the public comment period and notifying you of the public hearing. And also have a draft proposed order that you can review. Next slide. And so, and I think this is probably the most important part of our being here, is just to make you aware of the ways that you can comment and participate. So once we've opened the public comment, you can write written comment. You can hand them to me at the public hearing. You can drop them off at the office. You can mail them to us. You can fax them to us. You can send them to us via email. You can comment more than once, but don't feel like you're limited to one comment. And you can also use our comment portal, which we highly recommend, and I will go through very briefly. Or you can make oral comments at the public hearing. All of those methods are ways to submit comments on the record of the draft proposed order. So we have multiple ways of doing it. And the notice is what will open that public comment period. Next slide. So this is an important part, and it might sound a little legalese, but it's really important for people who have an interest in participating to understand how comments are evaluated. And so it's important that if you're submitting comments, if you have an interest in participating or requesting to participate in a contested case, that your comments be raised with enough specificity that it's clear what your comment is about. And also it needs to relate to our council standards within the jurisdiction and scope of council's review. If it's something outside of that scope, they just really can't consider it. So that's part of why understanding the standards, how you feel they may or may not have been met, and then how to comment to tie your comment to one of those standards is very important. So to raise an issue with sufficient specificity, a person must present facts that support the person's position on this issue. And I am going to read a little paragraph in my notes because it's important and I want to get it right. So anyone who wants to participate at the draft proposed order phase and beyond must raise an issue either in person or at the public hearing or by submitting a written comment before the deadline, because we have a deadline for submitting those comments in the notice. Failure to raise a relevant issue either orally at the hearing or in a timely submitted written comment during that comment period precludes further participation. So like if you decide 2 weeks after the comment period closed that you have a really important comment, it's not that we wouldn't feel that your comment mattered. It's just that the council can't consider it because that comment period has closed. So if you want to comment within the comment period that's in the notice. And then persons interested in being considered for party status in the contested case proceeding must meet those criteria of they have to raise the issue in person at the DPO hearing or in a written comment in the public comment period. And it must be raised with sufficient specificity so that council, the department, and the applicant can understand the issue raised and be afforded an opportunity to respond to the issue. And so to raise an issue with sufficient specificity, a person must present facts that support the person's position on the issue. And so the next slide, I think, has some good examples of like how to, yeah. So these are just kind of just general pointers of like what is considered an effective comment versus, not that it isn't a legitimate comment, but maybe it's less effective because it isn't to that specificity or clarity that we want. So for example, if you're referencing a specific citing standards, you're stating supporting and support the facts that you're stating. So if you have competing information or other information that you want considered, those are the things that you should attach as reference material, or pointing to exact places in the draft proposed order where you feel like there's an error or something is incorrect. I mean, really drill into the document and our standards and tie your comments to those standards And those are considered effective standards. Just not liking the project or raising issues that are outside of council's jurisdiction or standards, they kind of end up going nowhere because they're not relevant to our process. And so it's just really important to, if you're going to engage, to give you the pointers, which is the point of my bringing this up, on how to do it in a meaningful way. Next slide. So for every facility that we have initiated through a notice of intent, we will create a web page for that facility. And so we have this facility web page is on this slide. It's just kind of a screenshot to give you an example, but this will be updated as we get new information. So when we move through a phase of the project, when we issue the draft proposed order, it will get posted here. It will get updated here. After this meeting, we will update the web page. When we issue the draft proposed order, we'll also post this meeting record. It'll all get up there. All the documents, if you scroll down that web page, they're all the documents, the complete application, all the exhibits, all of it will be available through the links there. Some of these are very large files, so they aren't easy to email, but you can view and download them and read them online. There's a lot of good links on that page too that will lead you to other things. Next slide. So again, we have a ton of resources on our Oregon Department of Energy website. That includes the public comment portal that I'll talk about in a second, a little more detail, has all of our guides, our standards, our rules, all of our project information. We have a public participation guide on how to participate in our process. All of these things are available through the Energy Facility Siting webpage, which is the first link across the top. It's the little bottom row of links. And I highly recommend, I think we have an awesome website. It's a lot of resources. Take advantage of it. It's a lot of good information there. Next slide. So on that part, the last few slides that I'm going to have are just really about ways to stay engaged. So I mentioned Click Dimensions is our email notification system. We have ability to sign people up for it here tonight. If anybody's interested, you can also sign up for it through one of the links in the web page. But if you sign up for it, you can select to just hear about this project. You can select other projects. You can select all sorts of things to get emails on from the Department of Energy. And then you get an email notification in your email inbox whenever we issue one of these big public notices. It comes to you directly in your email. So that's one way to do it. And we can sign people up tonight after the Q&A closes if anybody's interested. Next slide. Oh, nice. Okay, and there's a QR code on the wall right there where you could just scan with your phone and it will sign you up. All right. We also have an online citing tool. This is a complicated topic. I'm just introducing it to you. We've covered it in a council meeting. We'll probably cover it in a council meeting again. It's a great resource. It's basically a geographic information system database. It's public serving, so it's designed to be interactive. People can just log on to it through the link and surf around and find the information. Turn on layers, turn off layers. If you're not GIS savvy, it could be, I think, a little bit of a lesson to learn it. And that's part of why we have a tutorial, but you didn't really have time to go through it tonight. But there are ways to access it. You can access it through each project webpage. And so if you there's an online map link on the yellow Rosebush page under the location tab. And if you go to that, it'll take you straight to that particular shapefile in the big state map. And you can turn on layers, turn off layers that will show you things that are related to our standards. So like we have a protected area standards where you can go in there and turn on the protected area layers and look at all the protected areas that might be around the facility that we're talking about. And you can do that for a range of resources. And the tool was really designed for the public and also developers with the intent of kind of doing a kind of an early initial cut of good siting, where you're looking at all the resource issues that you might encounter and try to figure out a way to design and develop in or propose a project that might be well suited for that type of development versus one that might have a lot of other issues to go. So that's the point, and I really encourage people, if you're curious and want to play around with that, it's a great tool. I like to use it myself for my work, and it's a lot of good work has gone into that. I believe it's OSU that maintains the database and updates it pretty regularly with all the layers. So it's a good resource. Next slide. So the comment portal, which I mentioned earlier, just wanted to make people aware. It's an opportunity just to send us comments once the comment period opens online. There's multiple ways to get to the comment portal. There'll be a comment portal link in the notice that comes out. It's also posted on the web page when we update the web page and issue and open the public comment period. And it's a series of clicks through our website, but it will allow you to walk through and submit a written comment during the public comment period. And you can relate it to our standards. You can fill out, or you can opt not to and just fill out a comment. You can upload a document or an attachment. And I will get a copy of it instantly. I will get a notification that it was submitted as soon as you submit it. It becomes part of our comment record. And then you will also get a notification that your comment was received. So you will get an email confirmation that we got your comment. And after that comment period, we compile everything. If we get comments during a public comment period, like if I get one in the mail or someone emails me a comment and didn't put it through the portal, we try to upload all of them to the portal because they will all show up on the citing docket. Citing docket is a different website, but it's all linked together. If you go to that link at the bottom, that will take, once you can view all of the comments that have been submitted. So you'll be able to see your comment. You want to make sure it really went through. That's what I always do. And then if you also want to see what other people have commented on, and only projects open for public comment will show in the comment portal. So if you want to comment on something that really isn't open for public comment, it's not going to show up there because it's not really a public comment period. All right. Yes.
And just to clarify, so once you submit those comments are provided to the applicant team. They're provided to the Energy Facility Siting Council, and all three entities are working to evaluate those issues and how to resolve them. And then you would have the ability to see the
I don't think your mic is.
just what I'm saying or the entire meeting? Okay, well,
Sorry, shut up.
so I was just clarifying that when comments are submitted to Kate on this project and for any project, they are provided to the applicant team and they're provided to the Energy Facility Siting Council as well. And all three entities are evaluating the issues raised in those comments and efforts to evaluate the merits and identify a resolution. And then the proposed resolution is produced in the department's proposed order. So we don't just receive your comments, we work very hard to address those comments as well.
And that's a really important distinction between the draft proposed order and the proposed order. So thank you for pointing that out. So, and this is just a little more detail. Like I said, some of this is because we're going to post this to the webpage and for the people online too, that you can go back and look at this. If you, when it comes out, you were like, what did she say about using the comment portal? You can go look at this slide and it'll walk you through how to do it. And it's pretty user friendly. The only thing I would say is that you have to remember to create your comment, then you submit it, and then you submit it again. But we're trying to get our IT team to fix that. So it's only submit once. All right, next slide. All right, so that kind of wraps up my piece. I'm going to hand it over to the applicant team. When they're done, they're going to hand it back over to us, and Nancy is going to open the Q&A. because Nancy has to manage not only the people in the room, but the people on the WebEx and the people on the phone. So we'll start with the people in the room, then the WebEx, then the phone. And then just so everybody knows, like this Q&A should really be reserved for the applicant team and the project we're talking about tonight. If there are people here that would like to speak to us, FSEC staff, after the meeting, we will stick around. If you have any questions or comments or anything about us or our process that may not relate to this project, it might relate to something else we're working on, we're here for you. So just wanted to make that clear. And then I will turn it over to Mitch Taylor, who's going to start off the Yellow Rosebush team. There you go, Mitch.
Thanks, Ed. Again, hi, Mitch Taylor, Director of Development at Savion. I cover projects all across the West. The developer of this project is Jeff Watson. As I mentioned, he had a family emergency. So some of the details, the supporting team around me will hold it close. Sounds good. Thank you. If it gets quiet, please stop me and I will speak up. Going to the next slide. Actually, a little bit before this, maybe just to describe who Savion is and how that relates to the project and who we are a member of. So Yellow Rosebush is the project. Everything that's contained within this project, all the contracts are associated with the Yellow Rosebush Energy Center project. That project is being developed by Savion. Savion, we're a US-based company. We're based in Kansas City, have been since 2019. We've been in development under several different names, but for the last 4 or 5 years, Shell purchased Savion, and we are Shell's renewable business in the US. We've focused almost exclusively on solar and battery storage. A couple of unique cases, we do some other renewable energy facilities, but our focus is in solar and battery storage projects. This project, primarily a solar facility with some potential ancillary facilities with battery. Well, this is the project team. Some of these names are not here right now, but they will be here at the next meeting. So I want to make sure you're familiar with them. Again, Jeff Watson's the developer. Travis Narum leads development for Savion. He will be here at the next one. I will unfortunately not, but I'll give my information to anyone should you have any questions. I'm happy to address anything. Linnea, the consultant, permitting, and Chris, our permitting lead, who's been on this project since its inception. Go to the next slide. I got ahead of myself on the slides. As I mentioned, so Savion, more generally, we have about 40 gigawatts of projects that are in development across the country or we have developed. This is our only project in Oregon at this time, a few others in Washington. Not as much in the West until the last couple of years. Our focus was been originally fairly close to home for us around Kansas City, up into the kind of central parts of the country, and a lot in Texas. We're really excited about the developments out here. One of the parts that's pretty unique with us and our relationship with Shell, is our parent, is it's enabled us to participate in some of the energy businesses that Shell is involved in. It's a big part of why we're in the Pacific Northwest, is because of Shell's energy trading platform that's based out of Spokane. They're extremely familiar with developing and contracting and delivering energy for larger energy consumers across the Northwest. And it's a big part of why we're here and why we think that we can deliver this project successfully. A little bit more of numbers of the projects. For context, this project's 800 megawatts and is one of the larger projects in our portfolio, but we've done a lot of projects elsewhere. You can continue. So focusing in on this project, so Yellow Rosebush, it's 800 megawatts. Probably constructed in phases. Expect those to be about 400 megawatts per phase. A big part of why they're phased at that size is because this project is interconnecting onto Bonneville Power Administration's facility on very high voltage on their 500 kV lines. There's a lot of infrastructure that goes into just getting onto those lines. And so a 400 megawatt project is kind of what we expect that first phase to need to be to have the economics of that project pencil out, just given the magnitude of the substation and upgrades that we'll need to construct for it. Second phase being about 400 megawatts to similarly utilize that. But that's why this is a large project. The energy infrastructure in that area is very large, and we're trying to access that system, which is why the project is larger. May include battery storage up to that. Again, that's very secondary to this one. I expect this as a solar project first and may utilize that. Our primary point of interconnection, if you're driving not too far from here, just down Bake Oven Road, there's a first substation that you get to. That's not where we're interconnecting. That's where the facility that is partially in operation is interconnecting. It's a very different project. We're not related to the facility that's out there in any way. The following energy facility that you'll see as you're driving east, we would expect to interconnect just north of that on the left side of Bake Oven Road as you're driving down there. This facility is entirely on the north side of Bake Oven Road. So if you're looking at the panels that are out there, we're on the other side of the road exclusively, generally to orient yourself. And it doesn't cross the canyon. So we're all on the south side of the canyon there. This community engagement slide has mostly been drafted by Jeff. And so this is where I don't want to speak too much for him, but Jeff has been trying to be an active part of the community, bearing in mind this is a very early stage project. These are some of the things that he's been doing or folks that he's been talking to, some of the contributions that he's been trying to install from this project into this community at this early stage. Should you have ideas, we don't live in this community. We'd love to know about opportunities for us to engage and be a part of it. So please do take my information and share that, or I'm happy to share some of that information with Jeff. I'm going to pass it on to Chris to speak on some of the development and studies that have been done here.
I think it's on. Is it on? All right. Thanks, everybody. Again, my name is Chris Powers. I'm a senior director with Savion on the permitting and environmental side. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. Thank you. So I'm going to go through some of the studies that we've completed. We really have started studying this site. Gosh, I started at Savion in 2022, and I think my first day, I was introduced to the site, and we've began doing studies out here in preparation of the NOI in spring of 2023. So we kind of had an idea of some of the items that we needed to really get into before we even submitted that NOI. And so we covered everything on here. Cultural resources, we surveyed the entire property for cultural resources, and we are avoiding all of the resources that we have identified in the facility area. Habitat, wildlife, we conducted raptor surveys as well as rare plant surveys. To give you a general idea of what the site is, it's comprised primarily of eastside grasslands, which is about 44% of the site itself within our fence line. We have shrub steppe, which is about 26%, and planted grasslands, which is about 23% of the area within our fence line. I will say the majority of that within our fence line habitat, 70% of that is either highly or very highly disturbed habitat as described by ODF&W standards. And so it kind of comes in at that category 4 or 5 level habitat. So pretty low level, probably corresponds to the fact that it's also zoned ag land. which I can also touch on that a little bit too. We conducted visual impact analysis of the entire area, a glare analysis, noise. We did a noise analysis, wetland delineation, which we should be getting concurrence from DSL any day now. But we also are avoiding all wetlands and water features that we delineated on the site. Because the underlying land is zoned EFU, as I just mentioned, exclusive farm use, as part of our application process, we're also requesting a goal exception to the state planning goal number 3. So we also conducted a really extensive economic and agricultural impact analysis for the project. And we evaluated the project really our effect on the local economy and specifically the agricultural economy in and around Wasco County. So all of that is in Exhibit K in our application. Next slide. Habitat conservation measures. So I think we have a couple slides on here because I feel like we're really proud of the work that we've done, and a lot of work has gone into habitat conservation on the project. So Savion, I feel I worked for other developers before, and when I came to Savion, I feel like we look at development a little bit differently than some of the other developers I work with. We really do take land stewardship very important. In fact, recently my permitting and environmental group within Savion has been renamed Land Stewardship. So as of last week, I'm part of the Land Stewardship group. This is really important to us, and whenever we look at land to develop solar, we really do try to find ways for low impact development. And we also try to find ways, if we do have an impact to that land, to mitigate for that. This is a little different because we're also required to do so by ODF&W, but it is something in our ethos, and it is something that we strive to do. So a lot of work has gone into this. I think 2 years or so has gone into habitat conservation plan that's included in our application. So the reason why this picture is up here, so ODF&W, who we've been working with for a long, long time, identified big game as a site-specific issue at the facility. So ODF&W on the map that Kate referenced, and other various maps that ODF&W has, they identified mule deer winter range that encompassed our entire study area. So although the site is primarily comprised of that east side planted grassland, there is a polygon that ODF&W kind of places on maps over the site, and it's mule deer winter range for our project specifically. And because even though our field delineations had the habitat rated as, some of it was category 3, which is okay habitat, or category 4, which is the highly disturbed, or the disturbed, and category 5, which is the highly disturbed, because it had this winter range overlay over it, it automatically put everything into category 2, which is really great. So we needed to mitigate for that. So in addition to all of the commitments that we've made in our application in design, construction, and operations of our site, for example, rangeland friendly fencing, no barbed wire around the perimeter of our facility. We're raising up the fence 6 to 8 inches to facilitate little critters to move across our site. Gosh, there's probably hundreds of conditions that we've committed to in that application. But the majority of that work, in addition to everything that we've already committed, was to set up this offsite and what we're calling the facility habitat mitigation areas, or HMAs. So I'm showing you this project. Those of you that live in this area may be familiar with this area. This is the Tie Ridge Ranch. The majority of our mitigation obligation has been met by working with ODF&W and Mr. Davis, who owns this property, to establish a conservation measure on 5,020 acres of his ranch. And for reference, it's located about 15 miles north of here. So it's located on the Columbia Plateau ecoregion, similar to where we are, and it's comprised of similar habitats, which makes it what ODF&W refer to. We needed to find in-kind and in-proximity mitigation. So it checks all those boxes. And it also happens to be upland grassland with some shrub steppe habitat. Although here, there's also Oregon white oak that's present in Bonnie Canyon and Big Canyon along 197 as you're coming into the valley. So we set up a conservation easement on 5,020 acres of that land. So we are proposing, and again, I also, this particular property also has that mule deer, and I believe this also has elk winter range overlay on top of it. So because it's the similar habitats as our site, because it has that overlay on top of it, it also kicks it up into category 2, which made this a really great site for us to help mitigate our impacts. So in working with ODF&W and Mr. Davis, who owns this land, and in our draft habitat conservation plan that could be found online, we're also proposing a lot of ecological uplift at the site. So we're doing a lot of sagebrush plantings. We're doing fencing removal. We're doing some Oregon white oak plantings along the canyons there, because when the fire blew through here last year, it burnt up some of the trees along those areas. So we're going to be doing some plantings there, and weed control measures. So next slide. So the Tie Ridge Ranch HMA didn't meet all of our mitigation obligations. So in addition to the ranch, we identified, in coordination with our engineers, our landowners, ODF&W, an additional 1,655 acres within our facility boundary, but it's outside of the fence line. And we're designating that as additional mitigation areas, what we're referring to as the facility HMA. And the reason why we identified those, it's really hard to see probably on this map, but it's the kind of black cross-hatched areas that run along the northern boundary and the eastern boundary of our site. And so working with our engineers and ODF&W and our landowners, we push back our fence line. Those are Buck Canyon and Hauser Canyon. And those areas were identified by ODF&W as their, what they call their PWCAs, or Priority Wildlife Connectivity Areas, right? I know. And so we modified our layout to push it back away from those areas for a number of reasons. Number one, those are PWCAs, which ODF&W find extremely important as connectivity corridors, not just for big game, but a lot of critters that they're tracking. That habitat, which is indicated by the green, was also the higher quality shrub steppe habitat, which for a number of reasons we wanted to get out of. Number one, the mitigation to mitigate for those impacts is a lot higher. It's the much higher standard to meet. As a land stewardship group, we want to make sure that we're siting the project on lesser quality habitat to facilitate mitigation and the continued use of this land for wildlife. And in doing so, we identified, because they are still within our facility boundary technically, those became really great areas in coordination with ODF&W to do more habitat uplift. So similar to what we're doing at the ranch HMA, we're proposing to install shrub steppe plantings, weed removal, that sort of thing, to provide ecological uplift to those areas too, to make them even greater for PWCA movement. I think that's it for me. So thank you.
Now we are
Kate, if I may, there's one detail that I did not include in my introduction that I think is probably to some extent the elephant in the room, which is when is this project, assuming this permit gets approved, going to be built? And my crystal ball is not perfect on this, and we're going to need to continue to update you. We think of development kind of as a four-legged stool. One piece is the real estate. That one, we have great land partners that have contributed to this being in a good place to be able to move forward. One piece is the permitting. This is why we're all here and continuing through this process. If this is approved, that's one more foundation of this project that is well established to carry it forward. The power contract piece, I kind of mentioned that with how Shell Energy can help in supporting that, but there's a very strong demand for energy in general, especially in the Northwest. And through Shell Energy, there's a lot of tools that we can use to find a power contract when we know the project's construction timeline. And last is Bonneville Power Administration's study process timeline. We've submitted our interconnection request on this project in the phases that I've described several years ago. We are expecting our first study back from them here this coming Q1 of next year. That will help to illustrate the amount of facilities that they need to build to accommodate this project coming online. Our analysis suggests that there's good availability for energy to go onto the system here, but it will take time for Bonneville Power Administration, who has been backlogged and late in all of their studies, to work through that process, determine those final costs, and for us to pay them to start the construction of those if we don't find some other means of advancing the construction. So it's hard for me to say definitively when this project will start construction because it is based on that timeline. But we are trying to make sure everything else is accomplished on this such that we can continue to push them, that we've done everything. This is a well-sited project, that we have energy customers that need this power, and we're ready to pay for the facilities necessary to interconnect it. And that's what we will continue to be doing. I'm hoping that this is coming online kind of at the turn of the decade, which would be construction starting in 2029 kind of time frame. But a large part of that is based on Bonneville Power Administration's timelines to study and actually build the facilities to interconnect it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we are opening up that public comment period. So I know this gentleman's, or excuse me, Q&A.
Great.
If I could get a show of hands of if there's other people in the room that are going to want to speak after this gentleman.
Cool.
All right.
First of all, thank you guys. So my question is more so about economical impact to jobs. I'd like to maybe if you have any idea of the number of jobs that will be generated during construction and then post-construction for the maintenance and upkeep of the facilities. If you guys would be able to provide more color on that, if a study was conducted there, would appreciate some knowledge.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I don't know the details. That would probably be more for Jeff, but I can speak kind of in general terms. I think we assumed for each phase, at the peak, it would likely be 300 to 400 folks on site. And during operations for what will eventually be an 800 megawatt facility, I think we assumed 8 to 12 full-time staff.
Hi, my name is Jay Chrisman. I live in the Dalles. I'd just like to know what kind of commitments you've made or what kind of policies you might have in place that ensure that the employment that happens within the facility is manned by local workers and not a company from Texas that brings all their employees in from out of state.
Jake, thanks for the question. Fortunately, this area has seen quite a bit of development of these projects, construction crews, folks like Lyuna who are here, IBW. There, we have not made a formal commitment to a particular union at this time. However, in the past couple of years, the unions have established an agreement on the way in which they will work on solar facilities, which very well supports a kind of three-party labor structure. The nuances associated with the project permit with FSEC and all of the detail that goes into this particular type of permitting lend themselves extremely well for folks who know how to develop projects of this scale in this area and work through all of those commitments that we have made through the project permit. So while we haven't signed a contract associated with this, everything points very naturally, especially with this being a state permitted project, to a natural fit with those parties and in the ecosystem of employment associated with these projects that's been happening up here already.
This is Sarah Esterson. I just, those questions are examples of things that the Energy Facility Siting Council has no jurisdiction or control over. So just as a heads up.
Just want to make a correction to the number of operational jobs. We assume 13 full-time staff.
Okay, are there any other questions in the room? Okay, we're going to go ahead and open it up to people on the WebEx or on the phone. If you're on the WebEx at this time, at the bottom of your window, there's a participant window, and there's a little hand icon on there. If you click on that, that will raise your hand to comment. And after you are done commenting or questioning, we will go ahead and lower your hand by clicking on that hand again. If you're on the phone, you're going to press *3 to raise your hand. And then when you're finished, you would press *3 to lower your hand. So we are opening up for WebEx comments or phone comments. Questions? So there are no hands, as you can see, raised at this time. We'll give them another minute and see if anyone has something come to mind.
Long process is complicated, but your comments help us as the council sure. So being with us during the process, you've got great staff number questions. Your questions on how to use stuff, let us know. That's a little overwhelming for you, but particularly interested in wildlife, huge value. There are different standards, both in terms of face things. That's your comment. Building this better. So thanks for showing up. We'll be back in October. Back here. Yeah, I
Forgot I didn't have my mic on. So just so you know, I had mentioned that we are furiously writing the draft proposed order. We do expect it to probably come out next week. With that schedule in mind, we would be issuing a notice on the draft proposed order, and it would set the public hearing up here, be in the same location for Thursday night, October 23rd. That isn't official until we have issued the DPO in the notice, but for those of you in the room or the call, I just say put a pin in it. We'll update you when the notice comes out, but that's our tentative plan at this time, is what we anticipate. Things can change, but that's the plan. So with that, no further ado, no other questions. I just want to thank everybody for coming. We're going to stick around as we break down. If you want a sidebar with us one-on-one after the meeting, we're here and available to answer your questions. Just really want to thank the Savion and Yellow Rosebush team for being here. They've traveled a long way. Our loyal council member, Ann, who came to our meeting, and Cindy for being on the phone. And thank you all for coming. Have a good night. I think we're going to close it out. Bye. Good.